All right. So first up, we're going to go in alphabetical order since we have such a star-studded cast tonight. We'll start out with Julie. Tell us a little bit about your book and read to us.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I'm reading from Summer Lovin', which is behind me here. And it is 3 novellas and 3 separate stories, but yet all 3 women are connected through their employer. And their employer, they all work for a construction company, and their employer gives them a month off every couple of years to go and do volunteer work somewhere around the country, somewhere around the world. This time, she told them to pick someplace exotic to go, because even paradise has its needy. And the only prerequisite is that they have to do something to volunteer in that community, like Habitat for Humanity or building a shelter or something like that. So these are 3 separate stories. One of them is called Maui Magic. The other one is called Bahama Breeze. And the third one is Jamaica Haven. So I think you've got some idea of where each of these is going to be set. And so each story focuses on one of the specific characters. So I'll read the prologue to this because it kind of sets it all up. All right, ladies, what have you decided? Addison Bradbury looked at the 2 women sitting around the table at the far end of her office. I'll start. Cora Donaldson, the head of purchasing, spoke first. She'd been at Bradbury Construction for 7 years, one of the first people Addison hired when she took reins of her father's company. Cora wasn't quite 5 feet tall and had an unusual combination of piercing blue eyes and red hair. She was generally quiet, and unless she was people she was familiar with, she rarely started a conversation. Cora was 38, single, and Addison had just recently discovered wrote fan fiction. She never brought a +1 to a company event or had ever said anything about a we when recalling what she'd done on vacation or over the weekend. I'm headed to an animal shelter called Haven. It's a full cycle shelter in Jamaica. What's a full cycle shelter? Samantha Recker asked. She was the chief financial officer who held the purse strings for what they were about to discuss. They rescue dogs and cats and give them whatever medical treatment they need and then find them new homes. There's thousands of these dogs on the island. The founder is sometimes out for days trying to trap an animal, and she'll stop anywhere and anytime when she sees a stray. Once she was on her way to a wedding as the maid of honor, and she pulled over and rescued 12 puppies from a ditch. She was featured in a local magazine several months ago, and for the really skittish animals, they have a halfway house to teach them how to be someone's pet. A halfway house, Addison asked, taking off her reading glasses. Yeah, some of these animals have been on their own for years, simply just trying to survive. They're afraid of everything, especially people. Everyday noises that we take for granted, like the microwave beeping or a shower running or even the toast popping up, is a threat to them. The halfway house teaches them how not to be afraid of the sounds found in the typical household. Once they're socialized, they're eligible to go to a new home. And I'll be in the shelter or out in the field or wherever it is that they need an extra hand. Our funding, she turned to Samantha. Thank you very much, Samantha. We'll give them a new play yard, and we're planning to build more outdoor kennels. Addison nodded. Sounds like a great organization. She turned to Samantha. I was headed to the Maldives to set up a homeless shelter, but I was able to clear my schedule. So I'm leaving the day after tomorrow to go to the Bahamas, specifically Nassau. I'm going to work with a group called United Aid, and we're going to clean up after Hurricane Eduardo. Oh, that was an awful storm, Addison commented. What was that, like a week ago? The destruction was awful. Samantha nodded. Yeah, the people are proud and doing the best they can with little to no resources. Our funding will be a game changer. Samantha Recker lived up to her name, fancying fast motorcycles, hang gliding, and anything else that caused her heart to race. She was stunning and somehow managed to evade being someone's wife. She stood almost 6 feet tall in her socks, and today she wore her long blonde hair up in a French braid. Her manicured fingernail tapped the green folder in front of her. What about you, boss? Cora asked. I'm headed to Maui and I'm working for Habitat for Humanity. We're funding a women's build for 3 families. All the work is done by women, except for a few specialized contractor. Every person on the build side is female. We're funding 3 houses this year, Addison said proudly. Addison was proud of the way her team had embraced the volunteer program she started 6 years ago. She had inherited the company the previous year when her father had dropped dead of a brain aneurysm on a job site. Addison had been 29, and even though she'd spent almost 15 years working beside her dad, she was still terrified. She was a firm believer of giving back and would be forever grateful to those that had helped her and her family during the lean years when her father was building his business. When the financials of Bradbury shifted from being able to donate small cash contributions and volunteer days, she had proposed this new program, Let's Do This, the volunteer event they were talking about right now. All right, it sounds great. Everybody be safe, have a great time, and let's get back to work. Thank you. That's it.
Awesome. You're up next, Jackie.
Okay. So this is from my release VIP, and it's about VIP centers around 2 celebrities. One is a pop star and one is an actress, and they're both at the top of their game. And Audrey just went through a pretty public breakup, and she's not really looking for anything serious. She's kind of reserved and a little bit quiet. And Harlow Thorne is kind of a bad girl of the pop music world. And she's had a bit of a crush on Audrey since she was a teenager. So we're picking up at the beginning of the book where they run into each other for the first time and the first time they're officially introduced. Harlow closed her eyes as her fingers glided along the piano keys. People moved around her, faces she wouldn't remember tomorrow. Carts full of dinner and glassware clanged together as they passed by. Voices of men and women shouted out orders over noisy employees who prepared for the coming event. Harlow didn't hear any of it. All she could hear was the melody that had started to take shape in her mind. She wasn't sure what it would transform into, and she loved it already. That's how it usually happened. A thought would become a lyric, a sound would become a beat, and an inspiration would become a tone. It would usually occur when she least expected it, and because of that, she never turned it off. Music was as much a part of her as her eye color. It coursed through her veins and hid in every strand of DNA. Casper sat down next to her. New song? She let her head sway, the beginning of one. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Casper looked handsome in his suit jacket and white V-neck shirt. His blonde, messy hair was intentionally casual. His blue eyes sparkled with excitement, and she couldn't help but put her head on his shoulder. You look very dashing tonight, she elbowed him in the side. He squeezed her. You can't be the only heartbreaker in the family. He leaned back, his expression serious. Have you decided on a second night in Dallas? I sent you over the information 3 days ago. Casper, you know I don't care. Just tell me where to show up and I'll be there. Harlow put her fingers back on the piano keys. Okay, I'll get it all worked out. I know, she smiled. Casper handled the details and always had. It would be too much to manage on her own, and he was the only person she trusted. He knew her likes and dislikes. He knew how much she could handle regarding turnaround times, and he was cognizant of making sure she had ample rest. Hell, sometimes she wondered if he knew her better than she knew herself. It was entirely possible. He glanced at his watch. The party starts in an hour. I need you to do some press before. Harlow tilted her head, trying to decide if G flat or G sharp worked better. I'll be there, 5 more minutes. Casper walked away without argument because he knew she wouldn't be late. She might be unpredictable at times, but she was always professional. She hit the keys a few more times and smiled. G sharp. Press questions were always the same. Harlow spent an hour rambling off the same answers in 100 different ways. Yes, she was thrilled about the album. Yes, the tour was going to feature her new songs and old. No, she wasn't dating anyone. Yes, having her songs in a summer blockbuster was thrilling. Although, to be fair, this was the first time her songs had ever graced the silver screen, so she let the annoyance over the last one slide. She was on the verge of losing her mind when Casper thanked the press and promised them more soon. Time for pictures with the cast, he whispered. Took you long enough. She elbowed him on the way down from the small press stage. You know I like watching your eyes glaze over with boredom. She was in the process of formulating a response when she caught a glimpse of Audrey Knox entering the room. Audrey wasn't just beautiful. No, that word wouldn't do her justice. She was elegant, poised, and had an aura about her that made her seem just out of Harlow's grasp. When people in the industry talked about someone having the it factor, they meant Audrey Knox. Don't even think about it, Casper whispered against her ear. Think about what? Hell, she'd been dreaming about it since she was 16 years old. Harlow wasn't one for crushes, but she'd always made an exception for Audrey Knox. Relax, Casper. You're always telling me I need friends. She gave him a wicked smile. Friends, yes. People to watch movies with. People to drink Cosmos with and laughed at failed relationships. People who could literally stop traffic in that dress. She could probably do it in jeans too. She tried to say it in a joking tone, but Casper knew her better than that. Casper sighed, but she stopped listening to anything he had to say. She couldn't take her eyes off Audrey, who moved from person to person, kissing cheeks, hugging hello. When she spoke, she seemed solely focused. It appeared she possessed that rare quality of making people feel like they were the only ones in her orbit for that passing moment. Audrey stepped in front of her and put her hand out. I'm Audrey Knox. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Harlow may have been in a daze of lust, but she was far too smooth to let it show. Harlow Thorne, and I assure you, the pleasure is entirely mine. Audrey tilted her head slightly to the side. She seemed as though she were making her mind up about something, and Harlow wished she possessed the power of telepathy. I love the song you made for the movie. You seem to have really connected with the characters. Well, I truly enjoyed doing it. Harlow took a step closer. If you'd like, we can get together later, and I can show you which songs didn't make the final cut. Audrey stared at her with so much intensity, it could only mean she'd take her up on her offer or place her on a mental list of absolute fucking weirdos. Audrey parted her lips to answer, and Harlow felt her pulse quicken. She was close enough to smell the light perfume Audrey wore. Her golden hair sat on her shoulders as if it knew the exact part it needed to play to accentuate her features. Audrey's eyes left hers for the first time since they started speaking. The flecks of gold seemed more pronounced against the blue once she shifted her head. I have to go, I'm sorry, Audrey said as she turned and headed in the other direction. Harlow turned around, wondering what could possibly have caused the sudden shift, but nothing seemed out of place. She looked back, trying to see where Audrey had gone, but she'd already disappeared into the sea of people. Shit, she mumbled under her breath. A music producer grabbed her arm and flung Harlow back into an evening of small talk and fake smiles. Harlow tried to force herself to listen to what he was saying. Granted, it was nothing of consequence. Even in the best of circumstances, this type of conversation would send her screaming for the hills. But she couldn't shake the feeling she had when Audrey made eye contact. The slight glimmer in her eyes had given away an inkling of interest. Harlow was well aware when people found her attractive, and she'd seen it when Audrey looked at her. Even if it had only been for a split second, it was there.
Okay, Jenny Frame.
Hi guys, I'm not Jenny Frame, as most of you will know, but Jenny does have a recorded reading from us, for us. She is reading from her July release that's called Home is Where the Heart Is, which is part of a brand new series for Jenny, the Rosebrook Romance series, and I will let her intro it for you.
Today I'm going to be reading from my July release Artists. And in this scene, Archie and Ash are dancing around each other, trying to work out how to work together more closely and perhaps have more. Chapter 7. The next week went much better. Both Ash and Archie worked on their respective duties. Archie was actually enjoying coming to the village for work every day, now that the office was running smoothly and without the tension between her and Ash. What was worrying was how much she was enjoying being here every day, and the excited feeling Archie got every morning when she came to work, and she knew why. The beautiful Aisling O'Rourke. It felt so wrong to be attracted to her. She was a work colleague, much too young for her, and she'd promised her dad to look out for her, not lust after her. If only it was just lust. but it wasn't. Ash intrigued her. Intrigued her by filling her thoughts. Archie could hear her laugh in her head and see the way she bit her lip when she was thinking hard. All the small things about her Archie had swirling in her head. She couldn't remember that giddy, excited feeling with Naomi or any of her more recent dates. But maybe that was because she knew Ash was off limits to her. Archie reached into the drawer and brought out the magazine with a picture of the two of them dancing. She'd been doing that a lot, trying to work out if it was just a random moment the photographer had caught in between bouts of sniping. She traced her finger over Ash's face and jumped when she heard Ash say, "What's that?" "It's the magazine article in the village from the press evening, remember?" Ash took the magazine from her and looked at it. "We're smiling at each other." "Yes, I know. Unusually." Ash looked up from the magazine and gave her a shy smile. Weird. That shy smile set Archie's heart off at a canter. Yeah, who would have thought? Ash held her gaze for a few seconds and then joked. "It's my turn to pick up the sandwiches from the pub. You can be in charge while I'm away." Before Archie could think straight, she stood up quickly. "I'll come with you." "You will?" Ash said with surprise. "Yes, I could do with some fresh air." "Okay then." Archie walked around her desk and said to Rupert, "We're going out for the sandwiches. Can you hold the fort?" "No problem." Archie looked to Jenna and Claire sitting behind him. "Don't let Rupert work you too hard." "As if." "We're going to have a dance break while you're away, boss." Archie rolled her eyes. Foxy's influence still lingers on. Once she and Ash walked outside the office, an awkward silence descended, and Archie wondered why she'd volunteered to do this. She searched for something to say. "Have you watched any of The Gatekeeper yet?" "No, not yet," Ash replied. Archie sighed dramatically. "You said you would, so I could talk to you about the series." Ash looked at her and said, "Have you started The Dastardly Duke yet?" She hadn't. She had picked up her iPad a few times, but didn't get past the first page. "No, I haven't quite gotten around to it yet." "Thought not. But if you start it tonight, I'll watch the first episode after I've been to the beach," Ash suggested. "That's a deal." "Wait, you're going to the beach at night?" "I go to the beach every night to read my book. I sit in the deck chair with my feet in the waves and live vicariously through the two people in love in my book. It helps me relax," Ash said. Archie could just picture it, and it gave her a warm feeling inside. It sounds idyllic. "What book are you reading now?" "The Laird and the Lady." "Laird? What's that?" Archie asked. "Like a Scottish lord of the manor. It's set in the Highlands. It's so windswept and romantic. Like Clementine in Thistleburn. She would be the equivalent of a laird." "I suppose she would, that's true. Anyway, I'll start your bookkeeper thing when I get home," Ash said. "Gatekeeper. You know it's Gatekeeper." Ash laughed and put her arm through the crook of Archie's. "Okay, Grumpy." Archie had stiffened at first when she put her arm through hers, but then relaxed more as they walked uphill to the shop to pick up the drinks and snacks before heading back to the pub for the sandwiches. "Have you had any more thoughts about our big project?" Archie said. "Not specifically, but I think it has to be something that's going to reach a different crowd. So far, we've reached out to the LGBTQ+ community and the eco community, but I think we need to get more tourists in. That'll give us a more diverse group of people to educate with our ideas." "True, but how?" Archie asked. Ash had a few different thoughts running around her head in the last few days, but couldn't quite pull them together. "Before we go into the shop, can I show you something?" "Sure, lead the way." Across from Ash's house, there was the start of a wooded area. She walked into the trees and reached back with her hand. To her delight, Archie took her hand and allowed herself to be guided through the woods. They soon emerged in a clearing, and a decaying stone building lay in front of them. "What's this?" Archie asked. "I thought I knew every building in this area." "Oh, there's lots you still don't know about Rosebrook. Believe me, it still has its secrets." Archie was led into the stone building and found a big room with rows of desks covered in dust, stone, and falling wood. "A school?" Archie asked. Ash smiled. "Yeah, it's so amazing. I used to play in here as a child, but when Mum found out, she told me I couldn't because it was too dangerous." Archie looked up and saw a thick tree branch sticking through a hole in the roof. "I can see that. It's a bit creepy too. When was this built, do you know?" 1890, I think. The number is carved in one of the stones outside. There's so much history here in Rosebrook. This school, the World War II defence structures on the beach, I don't think we're doing enough with all these things. Archie walked to the nearest desk and lifted up its lid. Inside was carved, Elijah, 1889. Elijah. There's boys' names carved in most of the desks. And you know something? They mostly all have gravestones in the churchyard. Elijah does. There definitely has to be more made of this site, as well as the other historical places, Archie said. Ash walked up to her and said, "It doesn't just have to be historical. I think we can link it back to our environmental cause." "How?" Archie asked. "These boys lived and died in this village. That means they were either farmers, fishermen, or worked in Rosebrook House, the original house, then the rebuilt one. I thought we could check the parish records, find out about these names, and make them part of some of the exhibits. If Elijah here is a farmer, talk about traditional farming methods and how we need to learn from the people of the past." Archie's mind started to whirl with possibilities. "That is a fantastic idea, and I know folks will love it." Ash put her hand on her heart and said, "Archie, are you saying I actually have good ideas?" Archie laughed. "You have amazing ideas. The local knowledge you have will be invaluable." Ash blushed. "I don't know about that. It's still not quite right for the big idea, but it gets us started. Oh, and wait till I show you this." Ash hurried to the front of the classroom and brought back something behind her back. "Hands out, Archie." Archie frowned. "What for?" "Just trust me." Archie held out her hands and Ash got a gleam in her eye. "I've been dreaming about doing this since you first asked me to make the tea." Ash brought out a teacher's leather strap and smacked it softly onto Archie's hands. Archie felt a ripple of excitement. "Is that an original?" "Yes, it's always hung on a hook on the wall. It's barbaric. Imagine what poor Elijah and his friends went through." Archie shook her head. "It's awful to think of these poor kids being whacked with that. Do you want to go? I'm sure you've thought of giving me a whack before now." Archie smiled. "Don't be silly." Ash took a step towards her and put the belt in her hand. "Go on, just to say you've tried it." Archie gulped. Ash's voice was laced with sexual tension. Did Ash realise she was being teasing? Or was she innocent enough not to know that her words had started a heavy beat and a longing inside of her? Archie took the belt and squeezed the handle tightly, never taking her eyes off Ash. It got even worse when Ash held out her hands and gave her such an innocent look. The mantra kept repeating inside her mind. "She's too young for you. You shouldn't be feeling this." But it had no effect. She brought the strap down a couple of times on Ash's hands with a thwack. She saw Ash shiver and her wet lips part. Archie couldn't think of anything other than kissing those soft, wet lips. Archie forcefully held herself back. and held out the strap for Ash to take. When she did, Ash's fingers lingered on hers. Archie, we better get back, Archie interrupted before she could say any more. I suppose back to the real world. Ash took the strap and walked back to put it on the wall. Archie had nearly lost control. And what's more, she detected want in Ash's voice and touch. Was she interested in her? Did that picture capture the truth? Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that reading. Cheers.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I'm going to read from Unbridled, a book that came out this summer. I usually write my romances from sweet to extra hot. This one leans towards the hot range. So it's a little more erotic than some of my other romances. But anyway, here is Unbridled. I'm sorry, who are you? I'm going to kill her, he mutters under his breath before he stands and offers his hand. I'm Alex. I glare at him and ignore his attempt to diffuse my building temper. I shove my hands into the pockets of the dough-colored riding tights that I've paired with a sherbet green polo shirt to entice Marsh. Okay. He withdraws his hand cautiously, as though I might lunge and bite it off. I'll teach you the basics: caring for your horse and equipment, tacking up your horse correctly, ground handling, then basic riding. I'm sure you're capable, Alex, but there seems to be a misunderstanding. I've arranged to have private lessons with Marsh Langston, not you. It's what I'd like you to do. I freeze as Marsh's warm breath washes over my neck. She steps around me and holds my gaze. My resistance is melting with every second that ticks past. But I thought we had an agreement, Lauren. You would do exactly as I instruct. My father's words crack like a whip in my brain. Unless you're prepared to repay me for your 4 years at Wellesley, and you live under my roof, you will do exactly as I tell you. Bastard, nobody will ever control me again. Marsh tilts her head, her expression curious. I can recommend another excellent riding instructor if you aren't comfortable with my terms. She waits a few beats. It's completely your choice. I will never force you to do something you don't want. I realize she's asking me, not telling me, to allow her control. No one's ever done that before. Ask me for control. It feels strange. I waver. I was looking forward to working with you, I say, lowering my eyes and voice at the admission. I regret it immediately because my gaze falls. Because my gaze falls on her breast and my mouth waters at the sight of her nipples straining against the thin fabric of her shirt. She places one long finger under my chin and forces my eyes up again. Her mouth twitches with only a hint of a smile, but amusement shines clearly in her eyes. You will. I can learn more about your potential by watching you, as Alex instructs you. You'll be watching? Yes, I will. I glance over at Alex, who has suddenly found something very interesting in the paperwork on the desk. I lean close to Marsh, lowering my voice to a whisper, even though Alex is close enough to still hear. I prefer women teachers exclusively. She raises an eyebrow, but I straighten my shoulders and raise my own eyebrow in challenge. We both know I'm not talking about equestrian lessons, and I'm not going to let her pretend otherwise. She bends to place her mouth inches from my ear and stage whispers. Alex is my brother's husband. he prefers male students exclusively. This explanation draws a wide smile from Alex, who continues to pretend interest in his paperwork. A hot flush diffuses my neck, traveling up my cheeks. I clear my throat to recover my voice and a bit of my dignity. And after I've covered the basics with him, her blue eyes glitter like sapphire shards. Then we'll see if you've shown enough potential to advance further with me. That's Unbridled. I've really enjoyed writing that, and I'm currently writing something a little bit lighter, but it's if you want something hot and sexy, look for Unbridled. Okay, next up is Brit, the titillating Brit Ryder.
Hello, thank you. I will preface this by saying this is definitely at least an R-rated book. So if you have little ones around, I would recommend putting them in the other room. I am reading from my book, Not Guilty by Brit Ryder. I wrote this book after I'm trying to think. I did Shameless. I did a little novella back in 2017, and it really got a lot of press, I guess. It was my first shot at a novella, at an erotica, and so I just thought, well, I'm going to try to write a whole book. So that's what I did. And I'm basically going to read the part of the book where it picks up right where Shameless left off. So this covers pre, during, and post Shameless, and it's from the one of the other characters' point of view. So I slip out my business card and slide it into the breast pocket of her sexy uniform. She shudders and closes her eyes. I turn and walk away, knowing she's watching me. I don't look back, and I don't search for her as I leave the parking lot. What did I just do? I have an hour and a half to get ready. That isn't enough time to shower, primp, and cook dinner. I call Tannins and place an order for 2 mushroom risotto dinners with fresh bread and a salad to be delivered at exactly 7:05. Food is the last thing on my mind, but my caloric intake today is dismal, and I'm hopeful for a hell of a night. I need energy. By the time I get into my apartment, I'm down to 68 minutes. I know Emery will be prompt, and if she shows up at all. Even if she's early, she won't ring until then. Fuck, why are most of my clothes packed away? My options are power suits or yoga pants. I have to have something sexy somewhere. I almost weep with relief when I find my little black dress hidden behind my suits. It hits right above the knee and clings to me everywhere. I don't bother with a bra or panties. I have 30 minutes to perfect my look and will need every second. I blow out my hair the best I can. I don't look as polished as I did yesterday, but I still look good. There's a knock at the door and my heart jumps. She takes my breath away. The genuine smile, the hair that sweeps across her forehead, and she's wearing that gorgeous uniform. I open the door wider, but don't move. She has to touch me to get inside. She hands me a crimson gift bag with red tissue paper. It's the exact color of my prohibited rouge lipstick. This is for you, for later, she says. I don't care what's in it. I only care that she's here. I want to grab her by her thin navy tie and pull her inside. Without my heels, she towers over me, and that's sexy as fuck. Are you coming in? I gasp when she lifts me up and walks into my kitchen. I wrap my legs around her waist. We need to close the door, I whisper. She brushes her lips across mine. I grab her lapels and moan into her mouth at the delicious kiss. She sets me on the counter and pushes up my dress, so she's pressed against me. Her belt buckle rubs my clit, and I shiver with anticipation. Disappointment quickly replaces my joy when I notice she's not packing. I stop myself from frowning. Excuse me, does Claire Weaver live here? A deep voice asks from the doorway. We both freeze. Fuck, it's the delivery guy. I peek around Emery's shoulder. I'm Claire. A young man shifts from one foot to the other. He's red with embarrassment, and I wonder what he saw. Emery turns to block his view and walks toward him for the food. Thanks, buddy. She slips him a tip, even though I've already tipped him online, and closes the door before he can see more of me than either of us want. I haven't moved. I want her to see me like this, wet and ready for her. Her shoulders visibly relax once the door is locked. That was close. She walks back to me. I smirk and lean back on the counter. Her eyes flicker from my jutting breasts down to my exposed thighs. I spread my legs more for her enjoyment. She smiles and runs her hands over them, stopping right before her thumb rubs against my sensitive lips. She isn't gentle, and I gasp with pleasure. I touch her face as though I haven't seen her in forever. Hi. I brush my hands over her lips. She kisses them and kisses me. Hi, she pulls back. I'm Emery Pearson. It's so very nice to meet you. Trust me when I say the pleasure is all mine. I'm Claire Weaver. I drape my arms on her shoulders. The Honorable Claire Weaver. I look down at my dress that hides nothing. My pussy is smooth, exposed, and ready. Maybe not at this moment. We both watch as she lightly touches my glistening slit. I run my fingers over the soft, short hair on the back of her neck, scraping my nails until I hit her scalp. She moans her appreciation. I've missed this, I say. You aren't sore? Her voice is low with a hint of concern. Deliciously so. Don't worry about me. I can take it. I run my hands down the buttons of her jacket, enjoying the swell of her breasts. I lean in to smell her spicy cologne. Are you hungry? She responds by bending down and running her tongue at the junction of where the warm folds of my pussy meet and my clit pulses at her darting tongue. I jerk and spread my legs wantonly. It has only been a day, but I need her. My mysterious woman, Emery. She stops and looks at me. Claire. Her eyes are bright. I can tell she's happy to be here with me. I don't realize I said her name out loud. It's just nice to have a name with a, I look into her eyes, with a face. She kisses my thigh and holds her finger up for me to wait there. I don't plan to move. She puts the food in the refrigerator and washes her hands. I can't stop watching her. Everything seems so unbelievable. What do you want, Claire? She's back between my legs, but she waits for me to instruct her. I want you to make me come. That's it.
That is so awesome.
Thanks.
I get everybody to rejoin us. Still waiting for some questions from our audience. I don't have any right now. Of course, Jackie
I have a
did.
question.
Okay,
I have a
Julie.
question. So Brit, why do you write as Brit? Because you have you write under a different name as well. Do you find it easier to do it that way?
Hello. Okay. I did, I planned it that way because so many people were used to the sweet heat romance from Chris Ryder book, or Chris, I can't even get it right. Chris Bryant books. And so I wanted to turn it up a little bit, and I didn't want my readers who had that comfort level of sweet romance to be put off by, going the extra for the erotica, to say things that, just to kind of go to the id in your mind, and this is what I want, and you say what you want. And so I actually had a lot of fun writing this book, and I have found that writing erotica is a lot more fun in first person present tense. So but I enjoy both.
Okay.
I enjoy writing both, actually.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. What inspired y'all to write these books? Jackie, how about we get an answer from you?
Sure. I don't know if you can hear my toddler and screaming in the background of my puppy crying, but that's my life. So there's no Zoom filter to keep their voices out. I wrote it because I like reading celebrity romances sometimes. And I don't often write traditional contemporary romance novels. I've only written 2. I'm usually in the, I see the comments, Taylor Swift. Yes, one of the people in this book is based off Taylor Swift. That's like, yeah, it is. So it was something that I really had been wanting to do. I discussed earlier on panels that I like jumping around in genres, and I like jumping around in tropes. And this has been a story that was kind of simmering in the back of my mind for a long time. And I decided to go ahead and give it a try. And so I wrote a few thousand words to it, and I gave it to a few friends and my wife to read and said, what do you think? Should I keep going with this? And everyone said, absolutely. So I did. And I struggle sometimes writing contemporary romance. There's a lot of talking that isn't found in the action books. So I have to roll up my sleeves and get a little bit more into that. But I really, really enjoyed writing this book, and I found myself really attached to the characters, especially because it takes place in few of my favorite locations. So it came to me because it was a book that I wanted to read. So I wrote it.
How about you? It's sort of a unique way, the way you approach that with 3 stories and each of them helping out a nonprofit. What made you think of that?
Oh, this is what I said in a previous panel that we talked about. This is, as an author, I know I and lots of other people, a book is kind of broken up into thirds. The first third, which is all about getting it ready to, what's the conflict, or what's the current situation that the 2 characters in. The end is wrapping it all up, and either, who did it, who's going to do it, who falls in love, that sort of thing. But it's the middle part that just kind of slogs through. And usually that's about the 20 to 30,000 word place. And I thought, okay, why don't I just write 3 20,000 or 25 to 30,000 word stories? That way I don't run into that problem. And so then I just had to figure out, okay, if I do that, how are they going to be connected? Because I wanted them to be connected. I didn't want them to be just specific standalone ones, but what are they going to do? And where can they go to have some summer fun? Because I knew it was coming out in July. So there's got to be a lot of, sweat and flesh and beach and things like that. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of all came together. As I said earlier, it was harder to do than I thought it was going to be, because it was 3 separate stories. And typically you write a book and then you like decompress from that for a week or 2 or months, and then you start the next one. Well, this one, it wasn't like that. And so it was one right after the other. So even though the word count was, and moving the story along quickly was pretty easy, it was a whole lot harder than I thought it was going to be. It's just something different. I was just thinking about something different.
All right, Brit, how about you?
I just wanted to try erotica. I think, writing contemporary romance, it's nice and sweet. And I just wanted to see if I can actually push it a little bit, push myself. And I completely pushed myself out of my comfort zone by writing erotica. And yeah, so that's why I wanted to do it, just for something different. I mean, I'd written romance, and you kind of write an erotica, and I was kind of pushing towards erotica anyway, because my books, the sex was getting a little bit more and more explicit. And so I just said, well, you know what, I'm just going to do it. So I just decided to do it, and I did it. And now I'm back to writing my romances. So I think Brit will probably write a book maybe once every 3 years or something, but I like the romance probably a little bit better.
Well, I don't have any excuse for what inspired me except my dirty mind and the fact that I think horses and women riding horses is extremely sexy. It's a power thing, that you're astride, 1,000, 1,200 pounds of horse, and they're under your control. So Unbridled is all about power. It's not BDSM at all. It's all about the power and the intimacy of trusting somebody enough to give to trust them with your power, to give them control over you. And that requires a lot of trust to reveal your deepest desires to even your longtime partner. There's a lot of couples, I bet, that never have revealed their deepest desires because they're afraid of being rejected or laughed at. And Lauren has desires that don't go with the rest of her dominating personality. And she has to trust that Marsh is going to keep her keep her trust, and everything between them is just between them. So that's what Unbridled's about. And Heather wants to know, is it hard to come up with love scenes? I'd have to say not for me. I don't mind. I think I'm one of the few people that don't mind writing sex scenes, because I see my parents were very affectionate with each other. I don't mean they didn't. They were discreet, but they made it clear that between two people that love each other, that intimacy is not a bad thing. And so I always see making love between two characters as is crucial to the sharing of themselves with each other. Anybody else?
I sometimes I do, but most of the times I don't, because I write like by the seat of my pants. I don't have a plot written down on a piece of paper hanging on a wall somewhere. So I write, the characters tell me what's going to happen next. And I do that. And it, making love or sex, if that's what the characters are leaning towards, it just kind of comes naturally. Sometimes it doesn't. And so I put, in bright yellow highlight, sex scene here, and then move on. Because if I try to get too stuck on, okay, I need to write this and I can't, then because I'm not in the right frame of mind, or things, I'm like under pressure from something else that's going on, I'll put a placeholder. But going back to do those scenes in those placeholders are hard, because I have to go back, a couple of chapters and, okay, where are they? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And then this naturally comes next.
Yeah, and writing sex is probably my favorite part, because of the intimacy.
Kidding.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think
we love to write what we love to do.
Sarcastic, yeah.
I just think it's it's you have these new characters, and they're new to you, and they're new to each other, and just the whole buildup. I love that whole thing. Like I could never just stop and put sex scene here, because then you lose the momentum, and then going back and trying to pick that momentum back up, because you've taken it all the way to that scene. And that's my favorite. That's it. That's what's going on. And so that I love it. I love writing sex.
It's gotten easier for me over the years. It used to be much more difficult. And I think it was because in the back of my head, I was thinking about the people who are going to read it. And the first face that pops in my head is my mother. But it's 9 books in. She should skim over it at this point if she doesn't want to read it. I actually enjoy writing the buildup more though than the actual sex scenes. It's not that I don't enjoy writing them. I just think it's more fun to build the chemistry between the characters.
Yeah. And my parents are not allowed to ever read my books. My mother says, I don't know why I can't read your books. Trust me. And my sister's like, yeah, trust me. You don't want to read her books either. So my parents are not allowed at all.
None of my family's read mine, except my sister has listened to my audio books, and I thought it was okay after she told me she'd accidentally bought one of Megan O'Brien's books and really liked it, audio books, and really liked it. I said, well, you can listen to mine then. Okay, so looks like our time is up. And wow, this is great. It was great seeing you guys and listening to all the readings. Thank you, ladies.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Deb.
you.
Bye-bye.
Have-